The polished marble floor of First National Bank gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights, reflecting the hustle and bustle of a typical Monday morning. Men in crisp suits and women in sharp blazers moved with purpose, their shoes clicking against the stone in a steady rhythm of commerce and ambition. Amidst this sea of prosperity, 18-year-old Lily Chen stood out like a frayed thread on a designer coat. Her second-hand jeans were worn at the knees, and her faded hoodie had seen better days. She clutched a crumpled envelope in her trembling hands, her eyes fixed on the imposing teller windows that seemed to stretch endlessly before her. Lily's heart raced as she inched forward in the queue. Each step brought her closer to a moment she had been dreading for weeks. The weight of responsibility pressed down on her slender shoulders, threatening to crush her under its immense burden. When it was finally her turn, Lily approached the teller's window with trepidation. The woman behind the glass partition wore a plastered-on smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "How may I help you today?" the teller asked, her voice a practiced blend of efficiency and forced warmth. Lily's mouth went dry. She opened it to speak, but no words came out. Instead, she thrust the wrinkled envelope across the counter, her hand shaking. The teller raised an eyebrow as she opened the envelope and examined its contents. Her expression shifted from mild annoyance to poorly concealed pity. "I'm sorry, miss," the teller said, her voice lowered, "but this isn't nearly enough to cover the outstanding balance on the loan. You're already 3 months behind on payments." Lily's vision blurred as tears welled up in her eyes. "Please," she whispered, her voice cracking. "There has to be something you can do. My mom, she's sick. We can't lose our house. It's all we have left." The teller's face softened for a moment, but professionalism quickly reasserted itself. "I understand this is difficult, but bank policy is clear. Unless you can bring the account current, we'll have to proceed with foreclosure." The words hit Lily like a physical blow. Her knees buckled, and she gripped the edge of the counter to keep from collapsing. The tears she had been holding back burst forth in a flood of despair and frustration. "Please," Lily sobbed, no longer caring about the stares from other customers. "We'll lose everything. I'll do anything. There has to be another way." The teller looked uncomfortable, glancing around as if hoping a manager would materialize to handle the situation. "I'm sorry," she repeated, pushing the envelope back across the counter. "There's nothing more I can do." Lily's sobs intensified. She slid down to the floor, her back against the teller's station, drawing her knees to her chest as she wept. The marble felt cold beneath her, a stark reminder of how out of place she was in this world of wealth and power. The other customers gave her a wide berth, averting their eyes from the spectacle of raw emotion disrupting their routine transactions. Whispers and disapproving glances rippled through the lobby. Just as a security guard began to approach, a commanding voice cut through the murmurs of the crowd. "What seems to be the problem here?" The sea of onlookers parted, revealing a tall man in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit. His salt and pepper hair was perfectly coiffed, and a Rolex glinted on his wrist as he surveyed the scene with piercing blue eyes. Alexander Blackwood, tech mogul and self-made billionaire, had not planned to visit his bank that morning. A last-minute decision to handle a transaction in person had brought him to the lobby at precisely this moment. As he took in the sight of the distraught young woman on the floor, something stirred within him. Perhaps it was the ghost of his own humble beginnings, or simply a flicker of human compassion in a heart long hardened by the cutthroat world of high finance. Whatever the reason, Alexander found himself moving toward Lily, his hand extended in a gesture that would change both their lives forever. "Let me help you up," he said softly, his voice gentler than anyone in the bank had ever heard it. Lily looked up through tear-blurred eyes, seeing only an outstretched hand and the blurry outline of an expensive suit. Hesitantly, she reached out and allowed the stranger to help her to her feet. As Alexander steadied the young woman, a jolt of recognition shot through him. He blinked, certain he must be mistaken. But as he studied Lily's face, those familiar eyes, that determined set of her jaw, a long-buried memory surfaced with startling clarity. In that moment, Alexander Blackwood realized that the sobbing girl he had impulsively decided to help was far from a stranger. And with that realization, the carefully constructed world he had built for himself began to shift on its axis. The lobby of First National Bank fell silent, the air thick with anticipation. No one, least of all Lily, could have predicted the seismic change that was about to reshape their lives in ways they could scarcely imagine. The hushed silence in the bank lobby stretched on, broken only by Lily's occasional sniffles as she tried to regain her composure. Alexander Blackwood's mind raced, grappling with the implications of what he had just realized. The young woman before him, with her tear-stained cheeks and desperate eyes, was the spitting image of someone he had known long ago, someone he had tried very hard to forget. "What's your name?" Alexander asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Lily wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her hoodie, still oblivious to the identity of the man who had come to her aid. "Lily," she stammered. "Lily Chen." The name hit Alexander like a physical blow. "Chen." It couldn't be a coincidence. "Lily," he repeated, tasting the bittersweet familiarity of the name on his tongue. "I think we need to talk, but not here." He glanced around at the curious onlookers, his expression hardening. "Oh, this isn't a spectacle for public consumption." With a sharp nod to the bank manager, who had finally emerged from his office, Alexander placed a hand gently on Lily's shoulder. "Come with me. I promise we'll sort this out." Lily hesitated, years of warnings about stranger danger flashing through her mind. But there was something in this man's eyes, a mix of authority and vulnerability, that made her trust him despite her better judgment. Plus, what did she have to lose? The bank was about to take everything anyway. "Okay," she said softly, allowing Alexander to guide her towards the exit. As they stepped out onto the bustling city street, the contrast between them couldn't have been starker. Alexander's commanding presence and expensive attire next to Lily's diminutive frame and worn clothing drew curious glances from passers-by. "My car's just around the corner," Alexander said, guiding Lily down the sidewalk. "I know a quiet place where we can talk." Lily's mind whirled with questions. Who was this man? Why was he helping her? And why did he look at her as if he had seen a ghost? They rounded the corner, and Lily's jaw dropped at the sight of a sleek black Bentley parked at the curb. A uniformed chauffeur stood at attention, opening the door as they approached. "Mr. Blackwood," the chauffeur said with a respectful nod. Lily's eyes widened at the name. Blackwood. Even in her modest neighborhood, everyone knew of Alexander Blackwood, the tech tycoon whose rags to riches story had become the stuff of legend. As they settled into the plush leather seats, Lily felt woefully out of place. She hunched her shoulders, trying to make herself as small as possible, acutely aware of every threadbare patch on her jeans, every scuff on her knockoff sneakers. The car pulled smoothly into traffic, the sounds of the city muffled by the luxury vehicle's superior engineering. For several long moments, neither of them spoke. Lily stared out the window, watching the gleaming skyscrapers of the financial district give way to more modest neighborhoods. Finally, Alexander broke the silence. "Lily," he began, his voice heavy with an emotion she couldn't quite place, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." Lily turned to face him, her heart pounding. "Okay," she said hesitantly. "Your mother," Alexander said, his knuckles white as he gripped his knees. "What's her name?" The question caught Lily off guard. Of all the things she had expected him to ask, this wasn't even on the list. "May," she answered, confusion evident in her voice. "May-Chen? Why?" Alexander closed his eyes, a pained expression crossing his face. When he opened them again, they shimmered with unshed tears. "Because," he said softly, 20 years ago, I knew a woman named Mei Chen, and I'm beginning to think that the reason you look so familiar is that you're her daughter." Lily's mind reeled. "I don't understand," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "How did you know my mom? Why would that matter?" Alexander took a deep breath, steeling himself for the words he was about to say, words that would irrevocably change both their lives. "Lily," he said, meeting her gaze with an intensity that made her breath catch in her throat. I think I might be your father." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Lily felt as if all the air had been sucked out of the car. She stared at Alexander, searching his face for any sign that this was some sort of cruel joke. But all she saw was a mixture of hope, fear, and a deep, aching vulnerability. That's not possible," Lily said, her voice shaking. "My dad died before I was born. Mom always said that he was a struggling entrepreneur who passed away in a car accident," Alexander finished for her. "I know, because that's what I asked May to tell you if anything ever happened to me." Memories cascaded through Alexander's mind, late nights coding in a cramped apartment, dreams of changing the world with technology, and always May by his side, believing in him when no one else did. "But you didn't die," Lily said, anger beginning to seep into her voice. You're here. You're Alexander Blackwood. If what you're saying is true, then why? Why weren't you there? Why did you let us struggle all these years when you have all this? She gestured at the opulent interior of the car, her eyes flashing with hurt and betrayal. Alexander's shoulders sagged under the weight of her accusations. It's complicated, Lily. More complicated than you could possibly imagine, but I promise you, I'll explain everything. You deserve the truth, no matter how painful it might be. As the car wound its way through the city streets, neither of them noticed the familiar neighborhood they were entering, the very same streets where Lily had grown up, where Mei Chen still lived, clinging to a life that was slipping away with each passing day. The stage was set for a reunion 2 decades in the making, a confrontation that would unearth long-buried secrets and force three lives to collide in ways none of them could have anticipated. And in the heart of it all was Lily, teetering on the precipice of a truth that would redefine everything she thought she knew about herself and her place in the world. The Bentley glided to a stop in front of a modest 2-story house with peeling paint and an overgrown lawn. Lily's eyes widened in recognition, her heart racing as she realized where they were. This is this is my house, she said, her voice a mixture of confusion and apprehension. How did you know where I live? Alexander's hands tightened on the steering wheel. I never forgot this address, he said softly, even after all these years. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken words hanging heavy between them. Finally, Alexander spoke again. Lily, I know you have a million questions, and I promise I'll answer them all. But first, I need to see May. We both deserve that much. Lily nodded slowly, still trying to process the whirlwind of emotions and revelations of the past hour. She led the way up the cracked concrete path to the front door, fumbling with her keys as Alexander stood behind her, a pillar of nervous energy. As they entered the small living room, the contrast between Alexander's world and the one Lily had grown up in became painfully apparent. The furniture was worn but clean, family photos lining the walls, a chronicle of a life lived with love but constant financial struggle. Mom? Lily called out, her voice wavering. Are you awake? There's someone here to see you. A weak voice responded from down the hall. In here, sweetheart. Lily glanced at Alexander, noting the way he paled at the sound of May's voice. She led him to her mother's bedroom, pushing open the door to reveal a frail woman propped up on pillows, an array of medication bottles cluttering the nightstand beside her. Mei Chen's eyes widened as they fell upon Alexander. For a moment, the years seemed to melt away, and she was once again the young woman who had fallen in love with a brilliant, ambitious dreamer. Alex? She whispered, her voice a mix of disbelief and something else, something that made Lily's chest tighten with an emotion she couldn't quite name. Alexander moved to May's bedside, sinking to his knees beside her. May, he said, his voice cracking. I'm so sorry. I never imagined. May reached out a trembling hand, cupping Alexander's cheek. You're really here, she said softly. After all this time. Lily stood in the doorway, feeling like an intruder in a moment she didn't fully understand. Mom, she said hesitantly, what's going on? Do you know him? May turned to her daughter, tears glistening in her eyes. Oh, Lily, she said. I'm so sorry. I should have told you long ago, but I thought it was for the best. Alexander stood, moving to Lily's side. Perhaps we should all sit down, he said gently. Yeah, there's a lot we need to talk about. The next hour passed in a blur of revelations and long-buried truths. Lily learned of her parents' whirlwind romance in college, of the startup Alexander had founded with May by his side. She heard of the devastating choice they had faced when a rival company threatened to destroy everything they had built. I had to disappear, Alexander explained, his voice heavy with regret. Make it look like I had died in that accident. It was the only way to protect the company, to protect you and May. I thought I was doing the right thing. May reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. We both made mistakes, she said softly. We thought we were protecting Lily, but we only ended up hurting her in the end. Lily's mind reeled as she tried to process it all. The father she had mourned her entire life was not only alive, but sitting right in front of her. The struggles she and her mother had faced, the constant fight to keep their heads above water, it all seemed so senseless now. But why? Lily asked, her voice cracking. Why didn't you come back once the danger had passed? Why did you let us struggle all these years when you became who you are now? Alexander's face crumpled with shame. I convinced myself it was too late, he admitted, that you were better off without me, that coming back would only complicate your lives. And then, as the years went by, it became easier to stay away, to pretend that this part of my life didn't exist. He looked at Lily, his eyes pleading for understanding. I know it's no excuse. I know I can never make up for the years I've missed. But when I saw you in that bank today, when I realized who you were, I knew I couldn't run away anymore. May coughed, a harsh, rattling sound that seemed to shake her entire frame. Lily was at her side in an instant, helping her take a sip of water. The treatments? Lily said, turning to Alexander with a mixture of hope and desperation in her eyes. The experimental ones the doctors mentioned. Would you be willing to help? Alexander nodded without hesitation. Of course, he said. I'll make sure May gets the best care possible. It's the least I can do after everything I've put you both through. As the gravity of the situation settled over them, a fragile silence filled the room. Years of separation, of unspoken words and buried emotions, hung in the air between them. Lily looked from her mother to Alexander and back again, seeing them both with new eyes. The man she had idolized in absence, the strong woman who had raised her alone, they were no longer the flawless figures of her imagination, but real, flawed human beings who had made impossible choices. I don't know if I can forgive you, Lily said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Either of you, not yet, but, but I think I want to try. May reached for her daughter's hand, tears streaming down her face. Alexander placed his hand over theirs, completing the circle. In that moment, as the afternoon sun streamed through the faded curtains of the modest bedroom, three fractured pieces of a long broken family began the slow, painful process of coming together again. The road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges. Trust, once shattered, is not easily rebuilt. But as Lily looked at the faces of her parents, one familiar and beloved, the other a stranger she was only beginning to know, she felt a flicker of something she hadn't dared to feel in a long time: hope. The days following the emotional reunion passed in a whirlwind of activity. True to his word, Alexander spared no expense in ensuring May received the best medical care available. The modest home that had been Lily's entire world was suddenly filled with visiting nurses, state-of-the-art medical equipment, and a revolving door of specialists. For Lily, it was a disconcerting shift. The constant struggle that had defined her life for so long was replaced by a new kind of chaos, one tinged with hope, but also fraught with uncertainty. One afternoon, about a week after their first meeting, Lily found herself sitting across from Alexander in a sleek downtown cafe. Fancy he wore, but the contrast between his tailored suit and her well-worn jeans was stark, a visual reminder of the gulf between their worlds. I've been thinking, Alexander began, his fingers tapping nervously on the polished tabletop, about your situation at the bank. I want to help, Lily, not just with your mother's medical bills, but with everything. Lily stiffened, a familiar pride rising in her chest. We don't need charity, she said, perhaps more sharply than she intended. Alexander winced slightly at her tone. It's not charity, he said softly. It's it's 18 years of missed birthdays, Christmases, first days of school. It's me trying to make up for lost time, even though I know I never truly can. Lily's resolve wavered, but she pressed on. And what happens when you decide to disappear again? When you realize that having a sick ex-girlfriend and a daughter from the wrong side of the tracks doesn't fit into your perfect billionaire lifestyle? The words hung in the air between them, sharp and cutting. Alexander's face crumpled, the pain in his eyes so raw that Lily almost regretted her outburst. Almost. I deserve that, he said after a long moment. And a lot worse, probably. But, Lily, I need you to understand something. He leaned forward, his gaze intense. You and your mother, you're not some inconvenience or some charity case. You're my family. The family I thought I'd lost forever. I'm not going anywhere. Not again. Not ever. Lily wanted to believe him. Part of her, the little girl who had grown up dreaming of a father she'd never known, desperately wanted to throw herself into his arms and let him make everything better. But the young woman who had shouldered the weight of adult responsibilities for years wasn't so easily swayed. Words are easy, she said, fighting to keep her voice steady. But trust is hard. Alexander nodded slowly. I know, he said. And I don't expect you to trust me overnight. I'm asking for a chance, Lily. A chance to prove myself. To be the father you deserved all along. As they talked, Lily began to see glimpses of the man her mother must have fallen in love with all those years ago. Behind the polished exterior of the successful businessman, there was a warmth, a quirky sense of humor that reminded her so much of herself. They spoke of Lily's dreams, her struggle to balance her education with caring for her mother. Alexander listened intently, his eyes lighting up when she mentioned her interest in computer science. You know, he said, a hint of excitement in his voice, I have a program for promising young coders at my company. No strings attached, just an opportunity to learn and grow. Would you be interested in something like that? Lily hesitated, torn between her instinctive wariness and the genuine opportunity being presented. I I don't know, she admitted. It sounds amazing, but I can't leave Mom, and I don't want special treatment just because I'm your father. Alexander finished for her. His expression softened. I understand, but Lily, you have an incredible mind. I've seen your grades, heard how you talk about technology. This isn't special treatment, it's recognizing talent and potential. And as for your mom, we can arrange for the best home care. You wouldn't have to worry. As they continued to talk, Lily felt something shift inside her. The walls she had built around her heart began to crack, just a little. She found herself sharing stories of her childhood, of the small moments of joy amidst the struggle. And to her surprise, she found herself genuinely laughing at Alexander's self deprecating jokes about his early days as an entrepreneur. As the afternoon wore on, their conversation turned to more practical matters. Alexander outlined a plan to not only take care of the outstanding bank loans, but also to set up a trust for Lily's education and May's long term care. I know it's a lot to take in, he said, noting the overwhelmed look on Lily's face. And I know it doesn't erase the past, but I want you to have the opportunities I didn't at your age, the opportunities I should have provided all along. Lily took a deep breath, trying to process everything. I need time, she said finally, to think, to talk to Mom. This is. It's all happening so fast. Alexander nodded, understanding in his eyes. Of course, he said. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere, Lily, I promise. As they left the cafe, stepping out into the bustling city street, Lily felt as though she was standing on the edge of two worlds. Behind her lay the life she had always known, one of struggle and hardship, but also of deep love and resilience. Ahead stretched a future full of possibilities she had never dared to imagine. Alexander placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Whatever you decide, he said softly, know that I'm proud of you, Lily. The woman you've become. You're extraordinary. And that's all thanks to your mother and to your own strength. Lily felt tears prick at her eyes, a complex mix of emotions welling up inside her. As she watched Alexander walk away, his tall figure soon lost in the crowd, she realized that the path forward wasn't clear cut. There would be no fairy tale ending, no magical solution to years of pain and absence. But perhaps, she thought as she began the journey home to her mother, there was a chance for something new, something that, while imperfect and fragile, held the promise of healing, of understanding, and just maybe, of a family made whole again. With each step, Lily felt the weight of her old life and the potential of the new one pulling at her in equal measure. The future stretched out before her, uncertain, but filled with a hope she had never before allowed herself to feel. The weeks that followed were a period of profound adjustment for Lily. The constant pressure of impending financial doom had lifted, replaced by a dizzying array of new possibilities. True to his word, Alexander had taken care of the outstanding bank loans, and May was now receiving cutting-edge treatment that seemed to be improving her condition, if slowly. But for Lily, the most significant change was internal. She found herself caught between two worlds, struggling to reconcile the life she had always known with the future that now stretched out before her. One crisp autumn morning, Lily stood in front of her bedroom mirror, barely recognizing the young woman who stared back at her. Gone were her worn jeans and faded hoodie, replaced by a smart blazer and tailored slacks, a gift from Alexander for her first day at his company's coding program. You look beautiful, sweetheart, May said from the doorway, her voice stronger than it had been in months. She was still frail, but there was a new light in her eyes, a cautious hope that mirrored Lily's own conflicted emotions. Lily turned to her mother, a lump forming in her throat. Mom, are you sure about this? I can still back out, stay home with you. May crossed the room, taking Lily's hands in her own. Lily Chen, she said firmly, you listen to me. This is your chance, the chance I always dreamed you'd have. I'm not going anywhere thanks to these treatments. It's time for you to spread your wings. As if on cue, a soft knock came at the front door. Lily's heart raced, knowing who it would be. She opened the door to find Alexander standing there, looking almost as nervous as she felt. Ready for your big day? He asked, his smile a mixture of pride and apprehension. The drive to Alexander's company headquarters was filled with a charged silence. Lily's mind whirled with doubts and excitement in equal measure. As they pulled up to the gleaming skyscraper that housed Blackwood Tech, she felt a momentary urge to ask Alexander to turn the car around. Sensing her hesitation, Alexander turned to her. Lily, he said softly, I know this is overwhelming, but I want you to remember something. You're not here because you're my daughter. You're here because you're brilliant, determined, and capable. This is your achievement, not mine. His words, so earnest and full of belief in her, gave Lily the courage to step out of the car and into her new life. The coding program was everything Lily had dreamed of and more. She found herself surrounded by like-minded peers, all passionate about technology and its potential to change the world. The instructors were world-class, and the resources at her disposal seemed limitless. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Lily soon discovered that her background, so different from many of her wealthy peers, sometimes set her apart. There were whispers, sidelong glances when people learned of her connection to Alexander. One afternoon, about a month into the program, Lily overheard a conversation that made her blood run cold. Did you hear? One of her classmates whispered to another. She's Blackwood's secret love child, probably only here because of Daddy's money. For a moment, Lily felt like the scared, out-of-place girl crying in the bank lobby. But then, something shifted inside her. She straightened her shoulders and approached the gossiping pair. Actually, she said, her voice steady, I'm here because I wrote an algorithm that improved database efficiency by 40% in my high school computer lab. What have you done lately? The stunned silence that followed was broken by slow applause. Lily turned to see one of her instructors, Dr. Reeves, standing nearby with an approving smile. Well said, Ms. Chen, Dr. Reeves nodded. Now, I believe we have a challenging problem set waiting for us. Shall we? As the weeks turned to months, Lily found her footing not just in the program, but in her new reality. She threw herself into her studies with a passion that impressed even the most seasoned instructors. Her natural talent, honed by years of making do with limited resources, blossomed in this environment of abundance. But even as she excelled, Lily never forgot where she came from. She made a point of visiting her mother every day, sharing stories of her latest projects, and reveling in May's improving health. And slowly, cautiously, she began to build a relationship with Alexander. Their weekly dinners became a time for sharing, for bridging the gap of lost years. Lily learned of Alexander's own humble beginnings, of the drive that had propelled him to success, and of the regret that had haunted him for 18 years. One evening, as they sat in a quiet corner of Alexander's favorite restaurant, he slid a small box across the table to Lily. What's this? She asked, puzzled. Open it, Alexander urged, an uncharacteristic nervousness in his voice. Inside, Lily found a delicate silver locket. When she opened it, she gasped. On one side was a photo of May, young and radiant. On the other, a picture of Alexander holding a newborn baby. Her. I've carried this with me every day since I left, Alexander said softly. A reminder of what I'd lost, what I hoped I was protecting. I thought you should have it now. Lily's fingers traced the smooth surface of the locket, her vision blurring with unshed tears. In that moment, the last of her reservations crumbled. She looked up at Alexander, not the successful businessman or the absent father, but simply the man trying his best to make amends. Thank you, she whispered, clasping the locket around her neck. Dad. The word felt foreign on her tongue, but right. Alexander's eyes widened, a smile breaking across his face like the dawn. As they left the restaurant that night, walking side by side down the city street, Lily felt a sense of peace settle over her. The future was still uncertain, full of challenges and opportunities in equal measure. But for the first time, she felt truly equipped to face it. With her mother's strength, her father's support, and her own unwavering determination. The girl who had once cried alone in a cold bank lobby was gone. In her place stood a young woman ready to take on the world, armed with not just opportunity, but the love of a family made whole again. 2 years had passed since that fateful day in the bank lobby. The world had changed for Lily Chen in ways she could never have imagined. As she stood at the podium facing a sea of expectant faces, she took a deep breath and began her valedictorian speech. When I first started at Blackwood Tech's coding program, I was a girl with big dreams and empty pockets, Lily began, her voice strong and clear. I thought I knew what success looked like. I thought I knew what family meant. I've learned that both are more complex, more beautiful, and more challenging than I ever realized. From her vantage point, Lily could see her mother, May, sitting in the front row. No longer frail, May's face glowed with pride and health. Beside her sat Alexander, his eyes never leaving his daughter's face as she spoke. The sight of them together, supporting her, still felt like a miracle. As Lily continued her speech, touching on the challenges and triumphs of the past 2 years, her mind wandered to the journey that had brought her to this moment. The coding program had been just the beginning. With her natural talent nurtured by world-class instruction, Lily had flourished. Her innovative approaches to problem solving had caught the attention of not just her instructors, but industry leaders as well. But it hadn't all been smooth sailing. There had been late nights of frustration, moments of self-doubt, when an elegant solution eluded her. There had been times when the whispers about nepotism grew loud enough to shake her confidence. In those moments, it was often her mother's quiet strength that steadied her. May, now fully recovered, had become a pillar of support, not just for Lily, but for other families navigating serious illnesses. She had taken the second chance at life and turned it into a mission to help others. And Alexander, Lily smiled as she thought of the man she now proudly called Dad. He had kept his promise, remaining a constant presence in their lives. But more than that, he had learned to step back, to let Lily forge her own path. One memory stood out clearly in Lily's mind. It was the day she had presented her final project, a revolutionary algorithm for predictive healthcare that could potentially save countless lives. As she finished her presentation, she had looked out at the audience to see Alexander, tears in his eyes, giving her a standing ovation. Later, when a tech giant had offered her an astronomical sum for the rights to her algorithm, it was Alexander who had encouraged her to consider all her options. "This is your creation, Lily," he had said. "Your chance to change the world. Don't let my name or my company influence your decision. Choose the path that feels right to you." In the end, Lily had decided to open source her algorithm, making it freely available to healthcare providers worldwide. It was a decision that had raised eyebrows in the industry, but one that Lily knew was true to her values. As she neared the end of her speech, Lily's voice took on a note of passion. "Success isn't just about the money we make or the titles we hold," she said. "It's about the lives we touch, the differences we make. It's about having the courage to face our past, the wisdom to learn from it, and the strength to shape our future." Her eyes found her parents in the crowd, and she smiled. It's about family, not just the one we're born into, but the one we build, nurture, and sometimes, against all odds, rebuild." As applause filled the auditorium, Lily felt a sense of completion. The girl who had once felt so lost and alone now stood confident and supported. But more than that, she stood ready to pay forward the second chance she had been given. After the ceremony, as Lily was surrounded by well-wishers, a familiar face caught her eye. Making her way through the crowd was Sarah, the bank teller from that day 2 years ago. "I hope you don't mind me coming," Sarah said a little nervously. "I followed your story in the news, and I wanted to congratulate you. What you've accomplished, it's incredible." Lily smiled warmly, taking Sarah's hands in her own. "I'm glad you're here," she said sincerely. "You know, in a way, I have you to thank for all of this. If you hadn't been so kind that day, if you hadn't cared enough to really see me, who knows how things might have turned out." As they chatted, Lily felt the weight of her journey settle around her like a comfortable cloak. From the desperate girl crying in a bank to the accomplished young woman she was today, every step had shaped her, challenged her, made her who she was. Later that evening, as Lily sat between her parents at a celebratory dinner, she felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over her. She looked at May, radiating health and happiness, and at Alexander, his face etched with pride and love. "I've been thinking," Lily said, her voice soft but determined, "about what's next. I want to start a foundation to help kids like me, kids with big dreams but limited resources, to give them the kind of chance I got." May squeezed her hand while Alexander nodded approvingly. "Whatever you decide, wherever this journey takes you next," he said, "know that we're here, always." As the evening wore on, filled with laughter, love, and plans for the future, Lily found herself reflecting on the strange, wonderful path that had led her here. From a moment of despair in a cold bank lobby to this warm circle of family and achievement, it was a journey she would never have chosen, but one she now wouldn't trade for anything in the world. The future stretched out before her, bright with promise and possibility. But more than that, it was rich with the love of a family rebuilt, with the strength forged through adversity, and with the determination to make a difference in the world. Lily Chen, once a girl with empty pockets and a heart full of dreams, now stood ready to write the next chapter of her story. And whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew she wouldn't face them alone. As the city lights twinkled beyond the restaurant windows, Lily raised her glass in a quiet toast to second chances, to the family we're born with and the family we choose, and to the endless possibilities that arise when we have the courage to hope, to persevere, and to love.